Hi everyone! I wanted to show you how you could build workflows in n8n where you communicate with Saleor API, and in this case a bunch of other tools like Slack API, Slackbot, OpenAI API, utilize a bunch of logical blocks and so on and so on. If you don't know what n8n is, don't worry, we'll explain that in a moment, but first I wanted to kind of tease you and show you what we would be building. So here is our workflow. We have a Slack channel where I can call my bot and it will respond with a list of collections in Saleor. So we'll create a new collection and we'll give it like a work in progress name. The collection is hidden by default, so we want to keep it that way because we want our workflow to generate the title, the name and the description for us, as well as the search engine parameters. So let's say we want to have a collection of blue products, blue clothes in this case. So I'll add these 3 items, I'll save the collection and call our bot again. I have to go back to n8n and rerun the workflow, but this is only because I'm running this in like a inactive test mode. So here is our work in progress collection. Now let's select it with a reaction to the video. So on that we'll have OpenAI API generate the title and description for us. So here is the proposal, Blue Essentials collection, discover our curated selection, and so on and so on. So let's say we like it, we want to save it to Saleor API, and it's saved. So now let's go to Saleor dashboard, and here is our Blue Essentials collection. So I'll show you how to build something like it. Obviously this is not like a production ready workflow, and I think most likely first pick from OpenAI API GPT 3.5 Turbo proposal would not be the best for your SEO and will definitely not make you stand out. But in a more real world scenario, we would have human in the loop. We would have some sort of back and forth between the human and OpenAI API, maybe some adjustments. And I think maybe this could be useful, at least for a first draft. So let's dive into it. Okay, so we want to have a Slack bot that we mention, and then that triggers the entire workflow. So for that, we need to create a Slack app. We'll give it a name n8n and then select a workspace we want to develop this app in. And in the start, we have a bunch of app credentials that doesn't really matter in our use case. We can go straight to event subscriptions because we want Slack to notify us when a certain event happens. In our case, that's when we mention the bot, but also when we react to a bot's message. So we need to provide the URL Slack will try to call when that happens, and we'll get that URL from n8n. So here we have to select the block webhook, which we can give an HTTP method. In our case, that's post, and also path, so that's bot triggered, and the URL we can copy from here. So now let's go back to Slack. We'll paste that in, but we get an error because Slack expects you to respond to its webhooks with a challenge parameter. So in the request body, they send a parameter they expect you to send back. So let's fix that. We'll use the respond to webhook block and we'll respond with text. We'll fill that in a moment. So we also have to go back to our webhook block and change it from respond immediately to respond using respond to webhook node. Now let's test it again. It won't work just yet, but we want to get the payload because what's pretty cool about n8n is that it saves the payload from each of these blocks. So here we have the input from the webhook request, and in the body we can find the challenge. So we can actually drag and drop the field. As we can see, it immediately changes to expression and executes the resolution of this field as JavaScript. So here we could get the actual value. And now let's test it again, and hopefully it would work. Yeah, that's great. The last thing we need to do to save it is add events. So we want to have app mention, but also reaction added. Let's save. And one last thing we need to do is install it to our workspace if we want to call it. Install it to Saleor Commerce workspace. And now let's go to Slack. So here's our channel. We can try calling our bot. It's not currently in the channel, but we can add a bot. And now we have to go back to n8n and test workflow again. This is only in development where you activate, so like go to production, you don't need to like retest everything, I suppose. So let's go and test it again. And now let's call our bot. So it should execute this flow flawlessly, and it did. So I'm very happy. Now the next step would be adding communication with our GraphQL Saleor API. Okay, so let's add a GraphQL block where we have to provide the endpoint and also query. Let's start with the query. So we want to fetch collections. I actually copied the query from my previous run. So we want to get collections first, actually 5, and get only the ID and name because we won't need much more for now. More importantly, we have to provide the endpoint. So in my case, that's this URL. Remember to add the /GraphQL/ in the end. And right now we don't need any authentication, but we will need in a moment. Okay, more than one channel exists. Channel, default channel. Let's test it. Okay, it works. So let's connect it to our workflow. And then we want to send those collections, what we fetched from here, in a Slack message. Okay, so let's add a Slack block. We want to send a message. So that's the action that we want. Operation send message to channel by name. Our name is marketing8. And now we need to select a credential we want to use to connect with Slack. So we obviously need to be authenticated. So we have to go back to our Slack view, and here we have bot user or auth token. So I'll copy that, and let's go back to n8n and create a new credential. I'll select access token, paste that in, test it successfully, so it should work. What we want to do is we want to get all these nodes, all these collections, and return them in one message. So here's how it could look like. We'll switch to expression, and I'll paste in this little snippet and walk you through it. So hello, here is a list of collections, and here in the double brackets we can actually execute JavaScript. So as you can see, I can actually reference, and I get a nice autocomplete at the fields from the previously executed nodes. So collections, edges, map, and so on and so on. I'll just paste in what I did previously. So that's mapping all the collections and then joining the names like so with the index. Actually, we don't need that dot in the end. And then we want to vote with the reactions, but that's in the near future. So let's see if that workflow works. So we have webhook, respond to webhook, GraphQL, and message. So that should trigger when we call our bot. So let's do that. And something went wrong. Let's check. Your Slack is missing required auth scopes. Oh, okay. We need to add a required auth scope. So let's quickly fix that. We need to have chat right. That makes sense. And we need to reinstall the app. It's cool that Slack immediately noticed. So hopefully that should do it. And we can actually test just that step. You don't need to test the entire workflow. And now I go back to Slack, and here is our beautiful message. Okay, so now we want to split it into two paths. So on the first path, we call the bot, we mention the bot, and then we get the list of collections. So this is basically what we have here. And oh, one useful thing is naming the nodes in a more descriptive way, because we'll have more nodes like it, so it's best to know what we are looking at. So here is fetch basic collections, send collections, and we want that to only happen when the bot is mentioned, but then the other path will trigger when there is a reaction on our message, on this message sent by bot. So we need to have a switch block for it, because our flow here depends on the type of webhook event that is triggered here. So we'll move these blocks for start so they can be here, and whenever we receive the webhook, we want to switch based on the event type. So we can drag and drop it. When event type is equal to app mention, we want to go one way, but when it's equal to emoji added, I think we'll verify it in a moment, we want to have a different path. So the first path is app mention, and when the app is mentioned, we want to proceed. So let's test if we didn't break our workflow. We'll test it. Let's call it, and here is our list of collections. Now let's test it again, and let's react to this message. So one, and we can see that it went to the second gate. So let's see what the payload was on that. Reaction added. Oh, okay, reaction added. That makes sense. So in the case of reaction added, we want to have a different path, a path where we call OpenAI API, generate the proposed title and description for this collection. Okay, so let's bring in the OpenAI block for communicating with their API, and then select message a model action. We also have to create a credential to connect with OpenAI API. So I'll go to platform.openai.com, create new secret key. So here it is. Go back to n8n, paste it in. It tested the connection successfully, so that's good. Now we have to select a model. I think for us GPT 3.5 Turbo would be good. It's cheap and we don't need much to work with. And I'll paste in a prompt that will help us get up and running. So it says some basic stuff like generate collection metadata based on content of the collection, and so on and so on. And then we'll have to actually paste that collection here. So I'll do it in a moment. I just need to connect it to our workflow. So it would be somewhere here, right? So we need to connect this OpenAI block with some sort of a block that will provide information about collection. But we have now two paths and fetch the collections data here. So we need to have a new block for fetching the collections. So let's copy the previous one and we'll name it fetch detailed collection, because that's for the selected collection. So here's the query. We'll fetch first 5 collections, but also this time it's not only ID and name, but also description, and then products in it, and name, description, attributes, values of these attributes, and so on. So basically everything we can get that will be useful to describe our collection here. We'll do that. The endpoint obviously remains the same. So fetch detailed collections, actually, because we are still fetching multiple collections. So we want to do that. And then we want to select from these fetched collections, we want to get only the one that was actually selected based on the emoji. Okay, so for that we need the set block that we will use to map the output from one block into a format that we hope to get. So I'll connect it with fetch detailed collections, and then we'll connect it later on. So here I'll paste in this snippet. So here's what's going on here. First, we have the double brackets that we need to execute JavaScript. Then we want to return like one value out of this node that we can then reference into another node. And the way I found it to be done in n8n is by executing an unnamed function immediately. So here I can actually assemble the logic that I need. So what I do is I get the respond to webhook, which is this block here. So I am getting the payload from that and actually the reaction, and then I'm mapping that to these numbers. So this is the reaction, the key that I would be mapping against. This way I'm getting the index that I will use to get a collection that was selected. This is kind of all over the place, but it works. So in the next step, I'm actually trying to get the result of the fetch detailed collections block and then get the actual edge from the GraphQL query and then stringify the node. Okay, so a lot of stuff going on here. So I think it's about time we test it. So let's test our workflow. So let's do it from scratch. Actually, we call the bot. We should get our collections. Awesome. Test workflow again. And now let's react to this, which should, oh, okay, we have an error here. Oh, this one, once again, default channel. Let's test it. Okay, it went through, but we still need to test this one. Okay, we actually can see that it lights up with green, meaning that the logic here is correct. We successfully targeted those nodes. So here is what it would return, the selected collection, and we want to use it to call the OpenAI API. Okay, so let's go back to our OpenAI block and reference that processed collection. So let's open that full screen. And here is the collection, JSON stringify, edit fields, item JSON, see if that works. So we'll test that step again. Let's execute previous node and test this step. And yeah, looks promising. So we are getting title, description, SEO title, and we can check what did it look like for the past execution. So here's the collection and here's the stringified data that describes the collection. Okay, so what's left is adding Slack node to notify us and get our approval for the proposal of title and description. So we'll select the send message and wait for response block. It automatically uses credential that we've created. We have to select send message to channel. Name is marketing aid. Now let's paste in the prompt that I prepared. But now I've noticed that the content that is returned from our OpenAI API call is just a big string. So I'll have to go back and fix it. Output content as JSON should do the job. So watch here as it changes. So now it's a JSON, cool. So this should now work. Please review the proposed content below. And we should also add an approval option. So this would be a button to approve. So let's test it. So we have to go back to our channel and here it is, stylish summer cotton picks. And we can approve it. Obviously in a more serious workflow, we would have approve or adjust or something like that. Here it's just approve. So we'll approve it. We get a screen from n8n on approval, which I'm sure can be configured, but I didn't find how. So we get data approved true. So that piece works. And now we can move to the final step, which is updating the collection in Saleor. So for that, we need once again a GraphQL block. I'll duplicate what we have here. So let's already rename it to update collection, paste in the query. So we want to trigger the collection update mutation, which requires the collection ID and the input. What's important here is that we need to authenticate this request, unlike the previous ones, because in the previous ones we were just fetching the collections, but now we need to update it. So that requires permissions. So we'll go to Saleor dashboard to the configurations, webhooks and events page, and we'll create a new app, grant it full access to the store and copy the token. And now let's go back to n8n and we need to add header auth credential and actually create a new one. So that will be authorization. And now I'm typing bearer space token, save it, and hopefully it would work. The remaining part is providing the variables. So we would need to get what's being returned from the OpenAI API and then pass it into our GraphQL block. So what's tricky about Saleor collection is that if you would fetch a list of collections, or actually I'll use this one. So we'll fetch a list of collections. You can see that we have a strange looking format for the description. So that's actually a stringified JSON. The reason for that is in the description field, we support rich text. I think that's editor.js format. So we need to provide our description in a similar manner as well. It's not as straightforward as just pointing to the previous node, but don't worry, we'll work it through. So what we need to do is we need to add a new code block that will allow us to kind of stitch everything together. So I'll paste in a snippet and walk you through it. So we are getting the description from the OpenAI JSON message content description. So that's this one. And then there's the name, so our title. We are also using the date object to generate a timestamp for editor.js format, and then we are passing the description as just a paragraph with the description text. And then finally we are embedding the SEO title and SEO description in the SEO object. We'll connect it to the mutation itself. So let's test how it looks. So this is the output from the code object. Awesome. And now we can finally update our collection. So I'll paste in the variables. So as the ID, we are using the code item JSON ID, and then so that's this one, and then input is this entire object stringified. So let's see if that works. I think it worked. So let's go back to Saleor. Here it is, our beautiful stylish summer cotton pics with this incredible AI generated description. I think this is ready to go live. But on a more serious note, what you could do in terms of next steps is add some nice decorative blocks, like update the user maybe before a certain operation will happen. Maybe after we update the collection, we can also add like a nice little Slack message, send a message, channel name, marketing 8, and then we can say collection successfully updated and test it. There it is, collection successfully updated. So what you could do is add some blocks like it. If you would like to move forward with this sort of workflow, I encourage you to improve especially the interaction with the model. Maybe you can even have OpenAI API generate an image for you, but I think to get good quality results here, you would really need to invest some time into how this whole pipeline works. But that's it. I hope you find it useful. Let us know what are you using workflow automation tools for. Maybe you've built some sort of workflow that involves Saleor already. Find us on Discord. It's saleor.io/Discord. And yeah, see you around.